Hello, welcome to another podcast. And again from the car, stationary, but there's a reason why I'm here. I'm going to share with you the process of writing a particular song. Now, I'm not so egotistical to imagine that anybody's interested in that. What do I know? But if you are, listen on and I'll tell you all about the background to a song called Flow, River, Flow. And I parked up here today for a particular reason. The song started to emerge, and then I drove to this particular deserted car park and sat in the back of the car with my acoustic guitar and worked on the song. I don't know if that vibe imparted the vibe to the song. I think probably it did. So the technique I'm going to describe to you is something I don't know if it's a thing, cinematic songwriting. I'm 74 years old now, and I can't write any more songs about cars and girls. And so I look for stories, and it's really interesting to create these stories. And how I do it is it's partly subliminal, and the ideas will just float down from the air. So I started a process, and I sang standing on a hillside taking in the sun. And then I envisaged that person standing on the hillside taking in the sun. And a line came naturally, seems the journey's over before it had begun. And then the whole song flowed from that thought. So what was this guy running from? Where was he going to? And there's lots of different ways you could take that story. Now, in my mind, I imagined, although I don't reference it in the song until we get to the chorus, he's come to a river. Perhaps the river is too wide to cross, and the journey's stalled at that point. Or perhaps the river is just metaphorical, and it's something else has stopped him in his tracks. So I worked on the song and developed it, and it was really satisfying, the process that came out of that. And I painted a picture that I saw in my mind's eye, but I carefully left it so that the listener's imagination could paint a perhaps different picture, depending on their experience and their thought process. So the song was finished eventually, and I went into Harbour Master Productions in South Shields, where I always go these days, and asked Martin to place 2 microphones as high as possible in the room, in the corners of the room, as far distant as possible, and another mic on the acoustic guitar, and a mic for me to sing. And I sang Flow, River, Flow live. And it sounded nice. And it had a nice atmosphere, the one I was looking for. I'm singing live, so the timing is all over the place, but it doesn't seem to matter. And then I asked Davey Ditchburn to do a proper vocal on it for me. And believe it or not, he turned me down. He said, I don't like the chorus. Flow, river, flow, out to the sea. Don't you pay no mind to little old me. He said, I don't like the little old me thing. So I said, okay. And I worked on the chorus to eradicate the little old me. And I've got to admit that it was kind of lazy. So I worked really hard on it. And there were 4 choruses. And I came up with a different payoff line in each chorus. My favourite is, I became a prisoner the moment I was free. Now you'll have to listen to it to get the context of all of that. And I'll put a link to the finished recording in the description, and also at the end of this video I'll put a link to it so you can listen to it. Now Davey sang a great vocal for me, and I asked him to redo it a couple of times because he sounded like Davey Dutchburn, and I was encouraging him to sound like me because the atmosphere, the vibe that I put into the song, I'm not great as a singer, I'll admit that, but the vibe was good. And after a couple of times asking him to sound like me, I thought, I know somebody who sounds just like me. It's a guy called Steve Thompson. So I went back into the studio and I sang the new choruses, kept the original, and then I asked Dave Dryden to add some dobro, and some really understated dobro that adds to the story. He's telling you the story on his instrument. And so there are only 3 components on the recording. My acoustic guitar, my voice, and Dave's dobro. And I think you'll agree, I hope you'll agree, that it tells a story and it has great atmosphere. I'll also put a link in the description to the a blog I wrote about the song, where you can see the lyrics, and you tell me in the comments if you wish what you think the story means to you, and I think everyone will have a different story. But thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next podcast. Bye bye.